The differences between Canada and the United States. Welcome to Daddy Daughter Broadcasting. Thanks for tuning in. I posted on my Facebook that I was going to do a video about the differences between Canada and the United States. And the responses were unanimous. There's three main points that I'm going to cover. We're going to talk about the healthcare system. We're going to talk about the difference between the currencies. I'm going to have a fun segment on the how colorful our currencies are and the exchange rate. And also, we're going to talk about the cost of living. So the staples, the food, the milk, bread, eggs, and meat. And I'm going to try to find some gas prices as well, just to see the difference. And also someone mentioned maple syrup. So I'm going to talk a little bit about maple syrup as well. Basically just the difference between, the attitudes about it in the States. I just want to start off by saying that no country is better than the other. Every country has its pros, its cons, its strengths and its weaknesses, and no country in the world today has the solutions to all of our problems. Every country has a different way of looking at things, and everyone has their own choices to make. So this is definitely not a video to judge Canada or the States. It's just a fun video to make comparisons and to show from my point of reference, to illustrate some of the differences between the two. I also want to say that my points of reference are New Jersey and Montreal, Quebec. I'm not familiar with the other provinces. I've been to Niagara Falls before, but that's about it. And in New Jersey, it's basically the Princeton area, which is where I'm from. So that being said, I want to start off by, I came to Canada in 2007, so it's been 11 years. And I didn't leave the country for any other reason but for my studies. I wanted to do my master's degree. I had the choice of studying, teaching teaching English in France or doing my master's degree here in Montreal. My main goal for coming up here was to learn French. Most of the French speakers are in Quebec, and it just so happens that after my master's degree, I found a career up here in Montreal. So that's pretty much it. That's the reason. There's no political motivation. There's nothing related to family or anything else. It was just time for me to leave the country and start a new life. I plan to eventually go back down to
the
Canada.
States.
In fact, when I actually came up here, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay. I thought it was really just for my master's degree, but one thing leads to another, and here I am 11 years later. And it's an amazing experience to get to see another country, to live in another country for an extended period of time. You really broaden your horizons, and it really brings maturity, and a different perspectives always have the tendency to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with what I really miss about the States. There's a lot. I can't cover everything, but I'm going to cover a couple of main things that I miss a lot. I really miss Yangling Lager. That is the oldest brewery in the States, in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, and you cannot import it into Canada. You can bring it up a couple of cases with you when you come back from a trip down to the States, but they don't import it, so you can't buy it in a store here. I'll show you what it looks like. So, let's see here. For some reason, here we go. I thought I didn't have internet on my iPad anymore. Show me a picture of the beer Yingling Lager.
Here are some images of the beer
Okay,
Lager.
so this is my favorite beer. Every time I go down to the States, I buy a couple of cases and I bring it back up to Canada. American beers tend to be a little bit less strong in alcohol content than the Canadian beers. Most Canadian beers are 5% and higher. U.S. beers tend to be 4.5% or thereabouts. I'm sure there, now with IPAs and stuff like that, there's definitely differences, but this is my favorite beer. I love this beer, and every time I go down, I get some. Another thing I miss is pork roll. Show me some pictures of Taylor ham. Now, obviously, some people, most people who are health conscious would not eat pork roll, but this is pork roll, and there is no equivalent either anywhere in the U.S. or in Canada of Taylor ham. It's made in New Jersey, and that's pretty much that's it. Canadian bacon looks similar, but this is it's nothing in comparison. There's nothing to compare it to. That I really miss. Most of the times people will make it in sandwiches. You'll fry up some Taylor ham, some eggs and cheese, whatever you like on a bagel. That's something I miss. I also miss Italian hoagies. Show me a picture of an Italian hoagie.
Here are some images of an Italian hoagie.
So this is an Italian hoagie. Basically a hoagie, you can put anything you want on it. It's like a Subway, but my favorite is provolone cheese, capicola ham, Genoa salami, lettuce, onions, hot peppers, oregano, and some real oil and vinegar. By the way, in Subways in Canada, or at least in Montreal, you cannot get provolone cheese and you cannot get oil and vinegar. So that's another difference. Whereas at least in Subways in the States, you can kind of formulate that Italian hoagie, whereas in Montreal, it's really hard to do. I also miss soft pretzels. Show me some pictures of soft pretzels.
Here are some images of soft pretzels.
Now, there are some mom and pop stops that have sprung up in Montreal. Well, actually some chain soft pretzel stores, but they do not look like this. They are a lot lighter, and you don't have that brown, harder exterior, and they don't know how to get the salt stuck to the pretzel even when it's dry. They put butter on it, and then they dip it in salt, or they sprinkle the salt on the butter, and it's just not the same. You put a mustard packet on it, you eat it like that. Obviously, there's tons of things that I miss or that I'd like to have to be surrounded by, but as far as internet, as far as stuff like that, YouTube, everything, it's here in Canada too. But like for example, the Apple. The Apple speaker, or the Google Home, stuff like that. That took a couple months before it actually came to Canada. So there is sometimes a delay also. So let's start off. Let's continue with the cost of living, the staples. Let's take a look and see how much the basic staples cost in the States. So we'll look up food staples. Okay, so we'll look up the price of food staples in the United States. So here we have milk per liter, per 0.25 liters is 21 cents. A loaf of bread, actually, you know what? There's a better one here. Okay, and I'm using numbeo.com. So if you look at milk per liter, it's 0.85, it's 85 cents a liter. In the States. If you look at bread, a loaf of bread, $2.56 in the States. Eggs, $2.48 per dozen. And that's the basic staples. If you look at beef, round beef, $11.50 a pound, a kilo. And you can do your conversions to see what that is. And we'll look at Canada just to compare. So I'm looking it up on Google as we go along. And staples. So we're looking at Canada food security. Actually, no, there's no prices on here. Let's see. Okay, so as of, I had to take some time to look that up. So as of November 2017, per kilo, round steak is $17.83. Looking up eggs, we're looking at $3.21 per dozen. Bread, $2.77. But I've seen bread, a good loaf of bread, good quality, go up to $3.49 a loaf. So that's probably an average. If we look at, so we were looking at, let's see, milk. Milk, is milk around here? They give you a big spreadsheet. So homogenized milk, we're looking at $2.49 per liter. So those are the differences between the food prices. You'll notice on some things the prices are vastly different. On other things the prices are very similar. But if you're looking at cars, electronics, anything else like that, any other products, there's a huge difference between the two. Back in 2007, when the dollars were at par, meaning that they were pretty much the same value, if not the same value, there was a government study that come out, and I've seen studies from 2013 and before. It says that similar items cost about 20% more in Canada. So that's an interesting point to point out. Now, if you're looking at let's take a look at the price of maple syrup per. I was looking at maple syrup. If you take a look at, I think it's 8 cans of 540 milliliters is $69. And whereas one gallon of maple syrup in Connecticut, which last year, 2016, was the highest producer of maple syrup in the States, was $69 a gallon. So if you do your conversions and add those out, maple syrup is cheaper in the States. One thing that's interesting about maple syrup is you don't mess with Canadian maple syrup. They're not really big on, the processed, how you can melt down like the Aunt Jemima fake maple syrups. I'm sure that Aunt Jemima makes real maple syrup too. But if you look at just those store brand or regular maple syrups, it's basically just brown sugar boiled down, and then you add maple syrup, you add maple flavoring to it. Canadians and the Quebecois that I know, the people in Montreal, they hate that stuff. They much prefer the real maple syrup. And I've been to the place where they make maple syrup, the tree farms where all the maple trees are. The syrup comes out clear, and there's actually different versions of maple syrup. Just like you would have different types of wine, or different flavors of beer. Some beers have different tastes, and some beers are more have more of a barley taste, more of a hop taste. Some beers are more bitter, some beers are less bitter. Some beers are red, some beers are even dark black, like Guinness. Same thing with maple syrup. You have different types of maple syrup. So the more you cook that original clear white syrup, you come out with a more burnt taste, or a darker kind of robe to that, a darker kind of color. There's lighter maple syrups, and so you don't mess with Canadian maple syrup. So as far as the money is concerned, that's a really interesting topic also. I've downloaded some pictures here of the difference between the colors. If you take a look historically, US dollars looked a lot like this $1 bill here. But more and more, US dollars are taking on some color as well. So you can see the difference. And the US dollars are made up of linen. Some type of linen with different filaments inside of it.